Hello, YouTube. Um, if you saw my preview for my next video that I would be covering, I will be reviewing Ultimate Avengers 2. Now, this movie, or I should say, Ultimate Avengers 2 Rise of the Panther. Now, um, this movie is obviously a sequel to the first Ultimate Avengers. Um, it is it's pretty much about the Black Panther. The Black Panther is pretty much the main character. The Avengers are just, kind of just like along for the ride. Um, it does continue their story from, obviously from the first movie, but a lot of the story centers around the Black Panther and and his origins and stuff like that. Um, this movie opens. This movie, the majority of this movie takes place in Wakanda. There are some scenes um, in the film. Um, there are some scenes in the film that take place, at like Avengers headquarters, but the majority of the movie is set in Wakanda. The movie, in fact, it opens. The movie opens in Wakanda. It opens with the Shatari. The Shatari have invaded Wakanda, and um, and they are in they are attacking Wakanda, and then we get a scene of T'Challa and his father together, who are not yet aware of what's going on. Um, they are welcoming home T'Challa, who's been away for some time, and then at that point, the Shatari attack reaches them, um, and T'Challa's father um, obviously Um, goes off to fight. The Shatari. Um, his father, who has not yet healed. His father, who sustained injuries from a previous battle. He's not yet fully healed, so he ends up getting assassinated by Kleiser, um, who is back from the first movie. Um, and T'Challa witnesses his father's murder by Kleiser, um, and his the origins of the Black Panther in this film are this movie, unlike the first film, this one goes off the source material slightly. Um, however, the origins of the Black Panther um, are pretty much how you would expect them to be, as far as like his father being the Black Panther first, and then T'Challa takes up the mantle when his father dies. So um, that aspect of it stays pretty true to um, the source material. Um, so T'Challa is gearing up as the Black Panther, and then he sees a newspaper clipping that his father had of Captain America. He sees like a newspaper clipping that his father had on a clipboard of Captain America, of an old article back in 1945, talking about Captain America and how he died, and how he supposedly died. It says Captain America. Um, it says Captain America, fallen hero, and then he sees and then he looks at a magazine and says and sees the headline, Captain America lives again. So and then we get a scene of Captain America. We get a scene of the present day of Captain America fighting Hydra, and in this movie, much like in the first movie, Captain America is still very much struggling with with he's still pretty screwed up, after his deep freeze, except he can't, he's having a very, very hard time, letting go, of his past, and he's struggling, and, he's very much struggling, to let go of, of those memories. The death of his men is still very, very much fresh in his mind. He's still very much haunted by, jumping off. He's still very much haunted by, by, jumping off the rocket, in 1945, and, in his deep freeze. So, he's still very much haunted by, by those memories. It's, it's literally, it's, to him, it very much feels like, that it happened yesterday. So, so he is, so we get a great deal of, like PTSD flashbacks, of Cap, fighting, Kleiser, back in 1945, and T'Challa, comes to see Captain America, as the Black Panther, and and obviously, Captain America has no idea who he is, so they get into a very brief fight, and then Nick Fury comes in and explains to Cap, like who he is and stuff like that. So so he comes to Captain America saying, like, how do I stop him? And he says, my father was killed 4 days ago by this man, and he shows him a torn newspaper clipping of Kleiser, and Fury goes, I thought he died in 1945, and he goes, and T'Challa goes, how do T'Challa goes, how do I stop him? And Captain America's like, you can't. And T'Challa's like, why? And he goes, because I've killed him twice, and he always comes back. And so he, so Captain America basically says, I can't, I've killed him twice. I can't help you. So, and the Black Panther in this movie is, much like in the, like how he first started out, in the MCU, he is very, Wakanda starts out as a very, very untrustworthy, they are very, very, wary, and very, very, they automatically, like if someone invades their land, they automatically treat them as hostile, because they are, they have never needed help. They have always been able, to take care of themselves. And then we learn at some point in the movie, when Captain America and Black Panther are teaming up, we learn, T'Challa explains to Captain America that the reason, that they are so untrustworthy of strangers is because he's telling him, T'Challa is telling Cap the days of his grandfather when he was king, and he says to he says to him um, he says to him um, he says to him when when my grandfather was king, Kleiser invaded our land, um, invaded our land. Um, my grandfather tried negotiating peace, but Kleiser didn't want peace. He wanted war. He wanted war in the very lifeblood of our land. Um, so from that point on, all trespassers became our enemy. Um, so so we find out at that point that Wakanda has been at war with the Shatari, as far back as when T'Challa's grandfather was king. Um, and um, and then we find out later on that Bruce Banner remember, if you watched my review of the first Ultimate Avengers, that they fight the Hulk at the end of the first film. In this movie, Bruce Banner is pretty much a prisoner of Shield. Nick Fury has him locked up, because of his actions from the first movie. Because of his actions from the first movie, nobody trusts him. Nobody's willing to work with him because of the huge mess that he made. Because of the huge mess that he made from the first film. So he is pretty much, he is pretty much a prisoner of Shield in this movie. In this movie, you pretty much find out everybody's true colors in this movie, and you find out the lengths that they're willing to go to protect the world and its people. And the biggest one of the biggest changes in this movie is Giant Man, is Hank Pym Giant Man, who him and the Wasp, him and his wife Janet, the Wasp, they spend most of their time arguing. In the second film, but at some parts in this movie too, because Hank, obviously, like with his huge ego and everything else, so they're very much at odds throughout throughout both of these movies. But um, towards the end of the movie, you really start to see, like who Hank is, like who Hank is, and really, despite his ego and despite him being, like a sarcastic prick, most of the time, deep down, he really is, a good person, and he really is, like a genuine hero, and he wants to, um, he very much, like wants to help, and he wants to, um, he wants, he wants to make a difference, and he wants, um, and he does consider the Avengers, like his friends and his family, um, and stuff like that. But yeah, no, the majority of this movie is, like I said, is mainly about the Black Panther, and you have Captain America and Black Panther um, who have formed a kind of like a who have formed who eventually form like a very much like a friendship, like like brotherly bond, because they obviously, they both lost, people that they care about to Kleiser, um, you know, Captain America lost, um, Captain America lost, Captain America lost, his comrades in World War II, um, to Kleiser. T'Challa, the Black Panther, lost his father. So they have a lot, you know, they have a lot in common in that regard, and they are they are very very similar in that regard, and um, but yeah, no, this movie. Another thing I want to mention: this movie is actually a lot more violent than the first movie. There's a little bit more blood in this movie. The action sequences are a lot more intense in this movie compared to the first movie. Um, there is um, the action sequences are, I think, a little bit more detailed. That there's more gore. I mean, it's still, the movie is still PG-13, but um, this movie is, like I said before, it's a little bit more violent. It's a little bit more violent. It's a little bit the action scenes and um, the action sequences and the action overall is a little bit more intense. Um, but yeah, no, it's very very good. Um, like I said before, it does go off the source material slightly, but it is still very much a good, um, enjoyable movie. It's very very much worth your time if you haven't seen it. Um, if you haven't seen it, I would very very much recommend this. Um, the Another one of my favorite moments in this is when Thor learns um, of the Avengers. He sees kind of like a one like possible future where the Avengers don't succeed and they all die. So Thor, against against his father Odin's wishes, literally goes off to warn them. Um, literally goes off to warn them. Telling them what's coming, because um, this war with the Shatari, this war with the Shatari, like it covers like everything later on, later on in the movie. Like there's this like Shatari ship in the sky, and it covers the entire planet within 10 minutes. And so um the final battle of the movie um is set in Wakanda. And so you literally have everybody, um so the Avengers are in Wakanda, and everybody, and they're all fighting together. Wakanda, the Avengers, everybody, um, everybody, and um, everybody, because T'Challa had to convince, um, his people and the council. He's like, look, if we don't, eventually, he comes to realize, look, if we don't get help, there's not going to be anything left of our country. So, um, so he eventually gets to the point where, um, where he feels like, to trust the Avengers, and that not everybody, um, and that not everybody out there is your enemy. Um, and he and eventually, slowly um, he starts to accept, and he starts to feel, okay, well, maybe I was wrong to, to judge these people and to think that yeah, just because they're outsiders, it doesn't it doesn't mean it doesn't mean that they're automatically our enemy. um but yeah, no, this movie is very, very well done, very, very well written. um like I said before, I would recommend this if you have not seen it. So anyway, let me know what you guys think. Did you see it? Did you like it? Let me know. Like, subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.